All right, good morning, everybody. It's 9 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. This is the development workshop. It's something that the city of Carmel-by-the-Sea used to do on a fairly regular basis. It's an opportunity for us all to get together with the development community, talk about building code updates, planning updates, just generally have a conversation about what's working, what we can do better, feedback from you, and it's nice to just see each other face to face. We're going to do this 2 days this week, same program both days. This is the first of two. I want to go through really quickly and just do some introductions to the team. And I'll just go ahead and say everybody's name if that's okay. We've got Sullivan here, who's our permit technician. Jermel over there is our building official. We got Agnes, not Agnes, Agnes right here. Evan is one of our planners. Agnes is in our environmental compliance division up in Public Works. And this is our new building inspector, Dwayne. And so we've got Marnie here somewhere. Marnie's floating around. There's Marnie in the back, another one of our wonderful planners. And Saray also in the back corner, another of our wonderful planners. So one more introduction. I'm going to introduce Councilmember Jeff Barron, who wants to make just a quick announcement, and then we'll get into the program. We'll let him and Worf hit the road.
So thank you, Brandon, for letting me make this brief announcement. Thank you, everybody, for showing up and all you people online. I wanted to announce that for those of you that don't know, Councilmember Tice and I and Agnes and Evan and 4 members of the community, including Michael LePage on the Planning Commission, have been involved in a citywide climate change effort for the past 3 years. And we're at the point where we're going to circulate sort of a final first draft of our climate action and our climate adaptation reports starting probably about 3 weeks from now. And there are things in those reports that affect the building community, from electrification of homes to fire resistance, and sort of everything in between, both to reduce greenhouse gases and to improve our built environment. And so we will be conducting 2 meetings like this one on April 26th and April 28th, Tuesday and Thursday, the last Tuesday and Thursday in April. Also at 9 o'clock, 2 versions of the same meeting, just like these 2 meetings. And we hope that you will reach out to us. I know Brandon has email addresses, and we will send out a copy. We will send everybody that we know a copy of the reports. When the committee finalizes the first drafts again next month. We'll send out copies, and then we will hope to see you for sort of public feedback and whatnot on the 26th and the 28th. So.
Can I just mention that we also do climate committee meetings every month, and you guys are welcome to come to those meetings every third Thursday of the month at 3 p.m.
Yeah, so that would be, let's see, 26, 28, probably the 21st. Probably April the 21st is a Thursday, if you'd like to come. But we will send you, if Brandon has your contact information, we will send you copies of the report before we have the final meeting as well, before we have the meeting on April 21st where we finalize these drafts. So if you have comments on the report that you'd like to sort of get into the first draft, you can let us know. If you just want to hear the results, you can come on the 26th and 28th, but we look forward to seeing everybody. And that's my announcement. And thank you for accommodating us.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Barron. A couple other housekeeping items. I just want to point out there are agendas up here on the front table, so please feel free to get up even right now if you want to come and grab one if you haven't grabbed one yet. We're going to go through some documents today, some new SOPs and things like that. All those documents will be made available to you via a Google Drive link after this, so that's why we had you sign in. We'll send that out so you can get all those docs. They're also going to be on our website. We have a website where all of our SOPs and everything and guidance documents are on there. But we'll send out a link so you can have specifically everything that was talked about today. And we plan on wrapping up at 11, so we'll go pretty briskly through this. I want to make sure that there's time for questions along the way, so feel free to raise your hand during this. I think it'll be better for everyone rather than having to hold your question all the way to the end. We'll take them as they come. This is meant to be pretty informal, and this is really a conversation. We have an agenda, obviously, that we want to get through, but don't be afraid to raise your hand and interrupt us. We'll try to answer your question the best we can. So that's the welcome and introduction. I want to thank everybody again for coming. I'm going to jump right into the agenda under the Planning Division and talk a little bit about our zoning code and design guidelines updates. So you may be aware, but recently the City Council approved a contract with Winter and Company. The principal is Nori Winter, and he and his company were involved 20 years ago with the Design Traditions project. So this is what created the design guidelines that we have today that we've been operating off of. It's a great document, but it's 20 years old, and so it's time to update it. There's new materials out there, there's new techniques for construction, the world has changed, and so we need to update those design guidelines to react to that. So what the effort's going to be, it's about a 12-month process. Winter and Company will be coming here several times in person. There's going to be a series of public meetings, both online and in person. April 5th, the City Council will be appointing a steering committee. This will be five residents who will be more involved with my staff and I on the construction and development of these guidelines. So these will be regular meetings with this small group. Each council member is appointing one person to this steering committee. So they'll be sort of the internal side of it, but we're going to be having, like I said, multiple broad community meetings so the whole community can have input into this. That steering committee is being selected April 5th. Then the following week of April 11th, Winter and Company will be here, and we're going to start doing the work, basically. They're going to come, we're going to walk the whole town with them, look at what's changed since they were here last time, start laying out a plan of attack, spend 3 good days working with them, introduce them to the steering committee, and then they'll really hit the ground running after that. They've already started working. They've been preparing some PowerPoints and some documents and some ideas and pulling together everything that they did 20 years ago. The nice thing about using Winter and Company again is that they have all the materials that were prepared 20 years ago. So we have this really great Dropbox we've been sharing with them, and it's a kick to see the pictures from 20 years ago. The Women's Center, a bunch of residents around a table with big maps of blocks, putting little fake buildings on and trying to plan this all out. So we're excited for more interactive community meetings like that as we go through this process. It's going to take a year, but it's going to be worth it, and we're hopeful that this document will live for another 10 to 20 years and serve the village really well. The next thing I want to talk about, any questions on the design guidelines or zoning code update? I should mention that the project is not just the design guidelines. We're actually updating the zoning code as well, but mostly focused on the sections of the zoning code that implement the design guidelines. So think things like height, setback, volume, things that you have to deal with on a regular basis that implement how a building looks. Now we're also going to do other cleanups since we're going to have the zoning code open, because when you update a zoning code, you also have to do an LCP amendment with the Coastal Commission, so there's a time thing. So we're going to try to be efficient and do just some regular cleanups in the code too, things that don't really affect the building, but updating definitions, clearing up where there's inconsistencies in code references across the code, so little things like that. So what we would be asking as we're going through this process from the development community is if there's something in the code that you've noticed where it doesn't work, or it's a bad reference, or it's out of date, let us know. I mean, we're going to be collecting and gathering and working on this over the next few months, so we want as much feedback as we can get. So that's everything on the zoning code and design guidelines update. The last thing I'm going to talk about, then I will shut up and sit down. We have a lot of really great process improvements in the planning division that I just want to share with everybody. One of the things that I think has really helped quite a bit is recognizing how busy the forestry department is. We have worked with them and pulled some of the really simple tree protection sign-offs. So for example, let's say you're putting in a sink. Right now, the way the code is written, technically you're supposed to do tree protection unless the forester signs off and says, no, you don't need tree protection, which the forester does, but because the forester is so busy, it's hard to get that sign-off. Sometimes it takes a week or two. So we worked with Public Works in the Planning and Building Division, and in the code it says or designee, so forester or designee. So what we've done is we've created a list of these really simple tree protection sign-offs, so we can just do it at the front counter here in our shop rather than having to wait for the forester to do it. So little things like that, we've implemented that recently, so hopefully you guys have seen some speed up from that. We're working on a scanning and digitizing project for all of our historic property files. So for those of you that have ever had a property file request, you know that there's file physically in our office back there. You can probably see some of the file cabinets. There's a file for every property in town that date back, in most cases, all the way back to when the city was created, so over 100 years ago. And all of these files are just sitting back there. So when you want to request one, you come in, you check it out. One of us sits with you to make sure that nothing disappears. Not that anybody would take anything, but we just got to make sure that things don't walk out the door. So it takes a lot of time from everybody. But what we've been working on, Sullivan, if you want to put up our GIS map. So if you'll click on, oh, you already got it, great. So what we've been working on is scanning and digitizing all these files. So you just go to the GIS map. Go back one for me real quick, Sullivan, if you don't mind. So you go to our GIS map. This is on our website right now. This is live. You go to our GIS map, you find your parcel, you click on it, and then your information comes up on the bottom right-hand side there. And then you click on Property Files, click for more info, and you get two options. So we scanned the large plans, so the 24 by 36s that were in the files, we scanned those separately, so you can find those quickly if you want. So those are the large plans. And then every other document, anyone that's come in and looked at a file before, they're just in there. You just have to leaf through everything and find deeds or permits or whatever you're looking for. And they only exist in hard copy, so we wanted to make sure we could preserve these somehow and get them accessible to everybody very easily. I keep saying 11 o'clock at night in your pajamas eating ice cream if you want, you can find these files. So you can go ahead and click on Documents and Records, Sullivan. And it does take a second because it's a large file, but you can see what comes up. And Sullivan, on the left-hand, top left, you can click on to get the tile view on the left too. There you go. Thanks. So you have an option to view in tiles, or if you just start scrolling down in the center there, Sullivan, you can see the scanning quality is really good. So we spent a lot of time finding the right contractor to do this. And the wonderful thing about this is that every document has been OCR'd, which is character recognition, basically, meaning you can Control F or word search for any word in there, and it picks up not only typewritten words, but also handwritten words, as long as it can read them. So, Sullivan, if you want to, Control F for historic. So it'll go through every document that has that word in it, and it'll find it for you. So we're really excited about this. Right now, we've got about 300 properties that have been scanned into our GIS map. We're going to put out an image so you can see, imagine the GIS map with sort of like a color blob on it that says if you're at one of these parcels, your files are now digital, and so you can get them digitally. It takes time, as you might imagine. We send out about 25 to 30 bankers boxes at a go, and that takes a month and a half or so for them to scan and get back to us and upload it into the system. So all told, it's going to be about a year to get this done. But we're really excited about it. It works, and it works really well. So the next phase in this, after we get all the property files done, will be to tackle all of the plan sets that we have. If you ever heard us talk about Vista Lobos, which is another storage area we have up by the Public Works yard, it's just a sea of rolled plans. They're really organized. Sullivan has done a great job of organizing them up there, but they're just sitting there. And so it'd be great to have them digitally as well. So that'll be phase 2 of this project. And then phase 3 will be everything else that we have that's already electronic, because it's modern times, getting into the system as well, so that everything eventually will just work off of the GIS map. All you got to do is click on the parcel that you care about, and you can get every piece of information you want. So we're working through this process, and we're really excited about it. It's one of our really, really exciting process improvements. And the last thing I want to show you from a process improvement, and this is a work in progress, but go ahead and throw up the website, Sullivan, if you would. We have been working to try to make our website more user-friendly. It had a lot of words on it. You would go to the website, and it's just a lot of words. And so what we've done is we've tried to compartmentalize at least the first 2 layers, so you can tell quickly where you want to go, if you want to go to the planning division or building safety division. So then go ahead and drill down another level, Sullivan. Okay. And then we have one more layer here, so you can find the applications. I think we even have the general plan called out now on its own, so that you can find that when you need it. So this is a work in progress, obviously. Again, another thing, you see the general plan there is easy to find now. People had to go through like 5 different layers to find the general plan before. Now it's just right there. So this, again, is a work in progress. We welcome any feedback, and that's going to be a theme through this whole thing, and the reason we're having this meeting. We want the feedback. I mean, this stuff that we do is for you guys and gals just as much as it is for us. So please give us the feedback if there's something when you're going through the website or you start using the interactive file search or any of these new processes where we talked about the tree protection sign off. If you have any ideas, please let us know. That's really the message I want everyone to leave with here today is we are here to listen and we're here to help. So with that, I'm going to shut up and sit down like I promised and let Evan talk through some of our new planning SOPs. So in an effort to try to make the process more clear, Evan's done a great job working with the rest of the team to develop more clear SOPs for the different tracks of planning review. So Evan, why don't you come up and give just sort of the highlight. I mean, you don't need to walk through the whole thing, obviously, but.
Can you start with track 2, actually? Awesome. So as Brandon mentioned, we basically revamped our submittal checklist into one document explaining, right now we have 3 or 4 different handouts explaining the process, what you need to submit. Everything's been grouped into one. And the idea is to inform, applicants who might not be familiar with the process, homeowners, neighbors who come in, they say, hey, I have this project going on next to me. What can I expect? This is something that we can give them. We can walk them through and say, here are the steps to the process. Here's an anticipated timeline. Same thing if a new owner comes in, they just bought a property, they're thinking about doing work to their house. We can say, we give them this document, we walk them through it. Right from the beginning, they understand kind of what they're getting into and what their expectations should be. So this is just a narrative, Sullivan, if you want to just keep scrolling. And then again, we had this other flow chart floating around. We incorporated it into one. Before I forget everything, it looks complicated, but it is. Yeah, it is an odd and oftentimes convoluted process. So it starts in the top left with the applicant task. So you submit your application, and then we're asking, actually, before I get into this, I want to say everything on here is not new information. It's all information that we've asked for in the past. It's just some of the ordering in which we're doing things is a little bit differently. The way things are presented, we're asking maybe a little different, but there's nothing new to the process that you haven't already been through before. So you submit the application. The first change in terms of the process is we're requesting that if a significant tree is proposed for removal, and Forest and Beach Commission is required, that occurs before we deem the application complete. And the reason for that is we've often had an application go to the concept review, and then we say, oh wait, this needs Forest and Beach Commission approval. Forest and Beach Commission comes out with the decision that then affects the project, and you have to redesign that project. So we want to know the answer, is this tree able to come out? Because if Forest and Beach says no, that's going to affect the design of the project, and we don't want to have to keep going back around in circles. So we're trying to get the answers that need to be answered early on first. So assuming no trees need to be removed, you would continue going down the list under staff tasks. So we review the application for completeness, which is just our typical review. Again, if it's incomplete, we send you a correction letter with the list of corrections, and then you would resubmit. If it is complete, and it's a historic property, we would have our historic consultant take a look at the application, then it'd be reviewed by the Historic Resources Board. And if it's not historic, then it goes straight to Planning Commission. So again, in terms of the process, it's the same exact process. The one change that we have made, which we are implementing already, is in the past, the volume study has come after the final approval as a condition of approval for the project. So this now is going to happen either before the concept or the combined concept and final review, if it's a combined hearing, or after the concept review and before final, if it is 2 different hearings. And the reason for that is that the volume study is it's a zoning standard. We want to make sure that the project complies with all zoning standards before we're recommending approval. So in the past, we've had projects that get through the entire process, they're approved, but they fail volume. We don't want you to have to say, okay, we have this project, it's been approved by the Planning Commission, everything's good to go, but it failed volume, so now we have to redesign and go back through the whole process again. Similar to the Forest and Beach Commission hearing occurring early, if there are issues, we want to be able to address them before we get to the final hearing.
Thanks. I'm going to interrupt because I can. That's a great point. And I just want to also mention, to tie it in something we talked about already, volumetrics and the volume study is something that we're going to look at during the design review and zoning code update, because it's one of those standards that's important because it does something very important to keep buildings from being too massive and impacting the way the community feels. But we've been doing it now for 20 years, and so we have some ideas about how to maybe make it even more user-friendly and promote more diversity in design, things like roof pitches, because the way the volume study works right now, you're kind of limited to 1 or 2 roof pitches if you're trying to maximize your floor area and the building itself. So we're going to look at things like volume study as part of this process during that code update. So once again, making my pitch for feedback. So if you guys have any thoughts about that, please come and get involved as these meetings start happening.
And then the process continues with any other, how we've been doing it in the past. You know, it goes to the final project review. It can, of course, be appealed to the city council. Hopefully that doesn't happen, and then you can apply for your building permit once the appeal period ends. No change there. So Sullivan, you can go the next slide. And then we just have general background information on how to submit the application. We are encouraging electronic application submittals for all permits. I believe Sullivan will be talking about that in a little bit, so I won't go too far into that. You can, of course, submit in person still. However, we do ask that you submit a digital set of plans as well. So even if you do want to submit hard copies, we do ask that you submit a CD or USB with the submittal. We've also identified the fees up front. Oftentimes the fees seem to come as a surprise to some homeowners, so we want to say, here are the fees that you can expect to pay, and also how you can pay them. Nothing new there, it's just providing the information. And then we get into the submittal requirements. So this is really the bulk of the change that we're asking for. One thing that we are reintroducing, this is not new, but it kind of did fall to the side, is the allowed volume worksheet. Sullivan, if you could just click that link.
So while that's pulling up, it's just important to note, Evan did such a great job on the sheet. All those blue things that you see as we've been going through, those are all hyperlinks to different areas of our website that will give you the information, things like the fees and things like that. So that's the reason for sending this out to you digitally afterwards. You can find all the stuff that it references through this document, which is really handy.
Sullivan, if you could go to page 2, please. So this has always been a submittal requirement. Again, it just kind of fell to the side, but we are asking that you start resubmitting this document just to start thinking about volume, just because we have recently had a lot of problems with projects not passing volume, so it is important to know just right off the bat how much volume you're allowed for your site. Not in this version, the web version, but if you were to download it, all the boxes are fillable. Oh, actually you can. So you can just type everything in and then print it out. It's very easy. The box in the bottom is an example of a 1,700 square foot residence on a 4,000 square foot site. So you basically just follow the prompts, answer the questions, and it'll spit out your allowed volume. Sullivan, if you could go back to the checklist, please. Another change we're asking for is, we'll get to it at the end of the checklist, but just as acknowledgement that the applicant has read through and understands the terms, or not the terms, but the process and the submittal requirements, and that's just to ensure a complete application. So on page 8, there is a signature line that we are asking you to to sign and return, that just states that you've read through and you understand the submittal requirements. And then Sullivan, if you can go back to page 4, please. So I'm not going to go through each bulleted item because this is effectively the same checklist that we've been using in the past. The biggest change is how we're asking for the information. In the past, it just said, provide a project data sheet, a survey, elevations, site plans, floor plans. But we are asking for that information in a specific order now. The idea behind that and the reason for asking for that is to avoid complicated reviews. Oftentimes, for our review, we want to compare existing and proposed. So if we're looking at existing and proposed elevations, we don't want to be flipping through 6 different sheets. Again, this is all digital, so we're scrolling back and forth, trying to compare one thing to another. We really should be able to just look at one thing, comparing it top on bottom or left and right. So Sullivan, if you can scroll down a little bit, please. So right there, that's a good example. Existing and proposed site plans, we are asking for both of them to be shown on the same plan sheet. Same thing with the elevations. There is some flexibility with this. Of course, if you can't get all the information that we're asking for on the same sheet, we just ask that it be consecutive sheets. So existing on sheet 3, proposed can be on sheet 4. The idea is we don't want it to be skipping around from sheet 3 for the existing site plan and then the proposed site plan is on sheet 7. That's really going to cut down on the time it takes to review our plans. We're going to be able to provide better service because we aren't jumping around. The information is clearly identified. So it is hopefully going to expedite things quite a bit. And I think the only new thing overall on this entire checklist in terms of new information being provided, Sullivan, if you could scroll down just a little bit, on item number D, preliminary grading and drainage plan. We've always asked for to show areas of grading and cut and fill. The only change is that first bullet to provide a preliminary stormwater management and drainage plan. So it doesn't have to be fully engineered. We just want to know, how the stormwater is, in theory, proposed to be managed on site. And I'd say throughout the entire checklist, that's the only new piece of information that we're asking for. Again, everything is the same. It's just how we're asking it be presented. So Sullivan, if you can just keep scrolling. So again, everything's the same here. We have streetscape elevations, roof plans, landscape plans, lighting plans, finished materials, renderings. It's all the same information. We're just asking it be presented a little bit differently. And then going back to kind of important questions, FAQs, we often get asked, what are the public noticing requirements? What's the requirement for that? And then we've also just thrown in some other information that you should be thinking about when designing a project, such as fire sprinkler requirements, when our utilities need to be undergrounded, and then information about the wildland-urban interface, and then links to additional resources that might be helpful throughout the process. And then again, there's that signature line that I mentioned. So that's the track 2 checklist. I can pause for questions.
Yeah, and the concept, while you're thinking if you have any questions, the concept behind this sheet and the track 1, which we'll go through a lot quicker, is, it's kind of all here in one spot for you. So, if there's something under these, what else should I think about header that you think would be helpful on here, again, please let us know. So Evan, if you want to go through the track 1, it functions pretty similar to this one. Does anyone have any questions, though?
I just have a question and comment.
Here, Anna. Oh, wait, you're on Zoom, so.
Okay. Hi, this is really great. Thank you. Love your checklist. I just have a comment. I know Sullivan and I have talked about it before. I think it'd be really helpful to have like a best practice visual example to reference and or just feedback in general on our plan sets that we submit, rather beyond RFIs, even just commentary. Hey, it'd be better if you did this font size or presented it this way, or just having that open dialogue so we can improve our plan sets too.
Saw another hand, I think.
Yeah, I see there it says applicant signature, applicant's printed name. Are we moving away from requiring a property owner to sign every piece of paper we submit to the city?
So the application will still need to be signed by the property owner. This is the person responsible for preparing the plans.
Is there a way to get an applicant's signature at the beginning that is enabling an agent to perform all duties under planning so that we're not having to go back repeatedly to our client and try and get signatures?
Yes, and do you have that form? So
Okay.
we have recently started implementing something like that. We do have an authorization form.
Great.
That form, that would be submitted at the very beginning, though, does need the property owner's signature.
Mhm.
And I believe, Sullivan, is it project specific or property specific?
It's project specific. So you're, at the beginning of your project, you can have the owner provide this form, sign, and then you won't have to worry about getting their signature on anything else for the remainder of the project.
Great, thank you.
I would say with the exception of the conditions of approval.
Okay. Yeah, it's when you have like 5 times during the project chase down a client to get a signature,
Yeah.
it's difficult sometimes.
Thanks, that's a great question. Anybody else in the room? Sebastian, do we have anybody on the Zoom that would like to ask a question?
Yeah, so if you are on Zoom and you want to ask a question, go ahead and hit the raise hand at the bottom of the screen, or *9 if you're on a phone. I've got Linda, you're unmuted. If you had a question, go ahead and say it. I'll hear you.
Hi, Linda, you there? Hello, Linda, we can hear you if you're there. Looks like Linda might be having audio issues. Sebastian, can you tell what's going on?
She muted, so I don't see anybody else unmuting, so I think we are all good.
Okay, thanks. And Sebastian, feel free to just interrupt if someone raises their hand, because we're just kind of letting people ask as we go along. So don't be afraid to interrupt us.
Yep, I will let you know.
Thanks. Okay, so if you want to run through the track 1 briefly.
Track 1 will be much quicker because it is based entirely off the track 2 checklist. It's just been modified for the scope of track 1 projects, which are smaller. We actually are developed, so this checklist is for track 1 majors, which would be small additions and then more substantial alterations of kind of little project components. So that would be, potentially window changes with siding changes, with site coverage changes, with landscape changes. Together, those pieces might make up a major project where one of those individually would just be a minor. So this
And Evan,
is
what's the difference between a track 1 and a track 2? Who makes the decision on those 2 different tracks?
So a track 2 project is for any new home or an addition that is 10% of the square footage or greater, or an increase in height of 10% or more. So you could do an addition under the track 1 major, and it just depends on the square footage of that addition, whether it's a track 1 or track 2.
And a track 2 goes to the Planning Commission, track 1 is a staff level approval.
Generally.
Right.
Any project can be referred up, any track 1 project can be referred to the Planning Commission as appropriate, but we do always try to keep those at a staff level when we can. So Sullivan, if you just want to scroll down. So again, same thing as the track 2 process. We have the process outlined. Just want to keep scrolling. A simpler flow chart, directions for submitting the application. Again, information on the fees, and then the submittal checklist, which is basically the same information that we're asking for. If your scope of work for a track 1 major project doesn't warrant what's being asked for, you can of course just exclude it. But again, it's the same thing as before, where we're asking for the information be provided in a certain order, presented in a certain way, in the hopes that will expedite the review and simplify it. with both track 1 and track 2 projects, sometimes we receive plan sets that are, 30 pages for a 200 square foot addition, and it's just not necessary. So we are trying to cut down on the information that is needed. We're only asking for what we need to review the project, in hopes that it will simplify things, speed things up. So I briefly mentioned at the beginning, this is for track 1 majors. We are still working on a track 1 minor checklist. So that would be for things if you just want to submit a fence, if you just want to do landscaping, just really simple projects that still require a design study. And then that checklist will be tailored for project-specific things. So if you want to do a fence, it'll say you need XYZ for a fence. If you want to rearrange your site coverage, you need XYZ for site coverage. Yeah, that's
Great, thanks, Evan. Any questions on the track 1? I mean, it flows pretty similarly to the track 2. Okay, Sebastian, I'm assuming nothing on the Zoom.
Randall Turner unmuted. If you have a question, go ahead.
Oh, negative. I'm just listening in along with Rick.
Okay, very good.
Great.
Thank
Well,
I don't
thanks
see
for coming
anybody
today.
else unmuting.
Okay, great. We have one more, and I'll run through it quickly. There's one more sort of SOP that we're developing right now, and it came out of a need that we've seen. We've been wrestling with Where's Waldo? We've been calling it jokingly back in the office. We've been wrestling with the Where's Waldo syndrome. So we have a very difficult and convoluted and multi-step process, and that's just how it is. I mean, that Carmel didn't get the way it is on accident, So, but because there are multiple steps, you get a planning approval, and then you come in and you get a building set approval. What has been happening, and this is all unintentional, I'm sure, is that what's approved at the planning level from materials, height, windows, things like that, sometimes there's changes made out of necessity or desire by the applicant when the building set is submitted. So if we don't get those highlighted, if there's not call outs or something like that, we're not going to be able to catch all of those just because of the volume that we're pushing through, and the planners can't necessarily go through with such a fine-tooth comb on the building set. So what we're implementing are a couple of procedures to help with that. One is a checklist. We'll start with this one. So we're going to have a condition of approval on there that basically says, the planning set controls all. And we've had to deal with this already a couple times, and that's just the way that it works. The planning set, from a design perspective, what the building looks like, is what controls. Even if a building set goes through and is approved without catching something, the planning set does control it. So we're going to put a condition on there and an acknowledgement that just makes everyone aware of that. This isn't a response to anybody doing anything nefarious. It's really just a way to hit pause at this point in the process and say, heads up, don't forget your planning set controls. If you're going to change something, that's fine. Just come and tell us, and let's talk about it and make sure we document it through the process so we don't have a blow up at the end and we all have to stop while you're ready to start doing construction. Let's make sure we hit that part in the process. So that's this first one. And then if you put up the checklist for me, Sullivan, I don't know if you have that. Okay, that's okay. So we have a checklist that we've made as well, so that when you submit your building set or any revisions thereto, if there are any changes from the planning set, it's a really simple checklist. Change A, here's what sheet you can find it on. Change B, here's what sheet you can find it on. Of course, we appreciate the call outs, but we have to have some record of those changes so that we can find them. There you go, thanks. So it should be really simple to fill out. It's just something you submit with your building set. If there's no changes, great, you don't have to do it. But it's something to help us, as much fun as Where's Waldo is, we want to stop doing it. It's difficult, and it ends up in the long run making your projects take longer. So this is the other new SOP that we've put in place. And again, all this is on our website. We'll be sending all this out via a link after this workshop. But any questions on this, the Where's Waldo concept? Makes sense? Okay. All right, well, next up, I want to welcome Agnes Mardelet from Public Works. She's our environmental compliance coordinator, and she's going to wow you and dazzle you and thrill you with all things environmental compliance.
Well, the good news is I have no news. So I'm actually going to sort of go real quickly over our drainage requirements, because that's really where environmental compliance interacts with the building community. You guys are already probably fairly aware of our requirements because they've been around. You know, the newest drainage requirements have been around about 5 years now. I'm sure you guys have seen the SOG 1707, which is on the screen. And really, this was set up about, like I said, about 5 years ago because our ordinance was very cumbersome, a little bit difficult to follow. So we wanted to devise a process that was going to be simpler for people to follow and at the same time more, that would help reduce the amount of neighborly issues that we've encountered around drainage. So how many of you are not aware of this at this point? Okay, one person. So I'm not going to go in detail over what it requires, some of the basics. And I really love that planning added the drainage plan as a requirement at the planning phase because I think that's really going to help a lot of projects too. It's thinking about, okay, where are you going? So we need to infiltrate drainage on site as much as possible, either by directing drainage to the landscape, if the landscape is large enough and can handle it, or by going into some kind of an infiltration system, whether it's a rain garden, which is my preference because they're surface. We can see them when they stop working. We can see it. The property owner 10 years down the line can still see it and can know where their drainage goes. Or the alternative, which oftentimes ends up happening in Carmel, is the infiltration trench or some other underground infiltration system. It has benefits because you can fit it underneath a driveway or underneath other things, and especially in our very tight lots, obviously there's obvious benefits to it. The drawback is it's not at the surface. Once, the building has happened, once everything is completed, we don't know where it's at anymore. We might have the plans here at the city, but the homeowner 10 years down the line, 2 owners later, has no idea where the drainage is going on their site. So to the extent possible, we like to go with some kind of a surface drainage system, but whenever that's not feasible, we go with underground. I would add that the other benefit of planning adding this requirement at the beginning of the process is, especially on sites that are projects that include ADUs, they're getting there's not a lot of space left on the site for infiltration of runoff. So taking that into account, between that and then trees and then, building footprint and all of that, thinking about it at the very beginning of a project is going to be critical. Our requirements state that any infiltration fixtures need to be at least 6 feet away from neighboring properties. That's so that we reduce the amount of neighborly concerns over the neighbor's drainage coming into their yard and causing issues on retaining walls and such other things. We've seen quite a bit of concerns across neighboring properties. It also needs to be 3 feet away from the public right of way. So again, that reduces the amount of space that you have to put in a facility. And if things are going to be really tight, we need to be involved at the beginning of the project. I would also add that for those, so these requirements I just talked about have to do primarily with residential properties. We do have a different set of requirements that are handed down to us from the state, actually, for larger commercial projects. So those projects that are commercial and create or replace at least 5,000 square feet of impervious area will be, they'll be subject to a whole different set of requirements. And for that, we follow a regional technical guide. I'm not going to go into details about this either because we don't get a lot of these projects in Carmel. There's, maybe one a year, maybe. if that. So, you know, and that's another one that we want to catch at the planning phase, because obviously there's infrastructure that needs to be put in the ground for treatment of runoff. That's a little bit more involved in those projects. One thing I will note, we do have, one thing that I will also note actually in terms of drainage for even for residential, one thing that is important is actually, Sullivan, if you can scroll down all the way to the last page that has the map, the hydrologic soil group map. So that guidance really provides a lot of, like, we try to make it easy for people to figure out what we want. We have a little map that shows, you know, how your drainage may be put in the ground. We provide some guidance, some regional guidance on how to do rain gardens. Another map that's important is this map. This is the hydrologic soil groups in Carmel. That's available on our GIS also, so you can scroll in, zoom into your property and see what kind of hydrologic soil group you have. On the map, the green is hydrologic soil group A. It means it drains really well. Those are our sandy soils. This whole area down here and down the south end of town is basically all sand, and so if you're going to put an infiltration feature there, it's going to be really fairly straightforward. And so especially for small projects, the city's not as concerned with being able to infiltrate on site, so you're not going to have as many requirements. If you're going to this yellow area and then the red area, yellow I believe is B or C? No, it's C. And then red is D. So D, anybody who's done any construction in the northeast part of town, they know it's all clay. D means it doesn't infiltrate. So any hydrologic soil group D projects, we require civil engineer involvement even at the planning phase, just so that there is an understanding that the project might work. They're the ones who at the end of the day are going to have to design your drainage for you at the building phase anyway. And so it's really important for them to be involved fairly early on so that everyone's on the same page.
Agnes, can I highlight something you said that I think is really important? You mentioned that these layers are all on the GIS map. So the GIS map that I showed at the beginning, where you can click and get your property files.
Yeah, actually,
this layer is on there.
If you go on the right, the list of layers, and you go down under land and environment, so click that Carmel soils.
And so you can put that up for yourself. We're actually, and in the update we're doing to the GIS map, that information, when you click on a parcel, it's going to come up, and it's not programmed yet. It's all on a development site, but that information will come up when you click on your parcel, so you don't even have to put this layer on. You click on the parcel that you're interested in, and it'll tell you your soil layer. It'll tell you whether your property is historic. It'll tell you if you're in a high fire hazard severity zone. Yeah. All the stuff that you need to know before you start developing. We're trying to build it into our GIS map. So you can see once you select the layer, then it's on there, but we're programming it so that all you have to do is just click on the parcel. You don't have to turn on the layers. You just click on the parcel, and it'll tell you everything you need to know about the property.
You stated that the D soils would require a civil engineer. I'm assuming wouldn't. What about the intermediates? Where's the cutoff for when a civil would be required? And is there guidance provided on the website for that?
So that's on that same SOG. It sort of has a list of projects where a civil does not have to be involved. Any projects that are, I think it's over 1,200 square feet of new. Let's see, hold on, this has been 4 years. I should know this by heart. Yeah, 1,200 square feet of impervious area created or more has to have a civil engineer involved, even in soil group A. But anything under that, we can be more flexible in terms of the civil engineer involvement. So it's sort of, so this is set up so that if you have a super simple project, really a small addition, and you're meeting all of our requirements where your site slopes are minimal, less than 7%, and then your site soils are well drained. You know, if you do, your drainage, if you do your drainage at the surface, and you have good soils, and you're not doing an infiltration feature and that kind of thing, you don't even need you can just, an architect can do it, or you don't need like a special permit to do that. Now, if you start doing an underground infiltration feature, but you're in good soils, you're under 1,200 square feet of impervious area that connects to it, an architect can do that. If you go over 1,200 square feet, and if you're in good soils. If you're in bad soils, and you're doing underground infiltration, now you're, if you have bad soils, and whether you're doing surface or underground, you have to have a civil involved. If you're in good soils, but you're under 1,200 square feet, then an architect can do it. If you're in good soils over 1,200, bad soils over 1,200, anything over 1,200 square feet of new impervious, we want a civil involved. So that's sort of how it's sort of set up so that, you know, a simple project, you can kind of just do it yourself, but anything as the requirements, as you handle more water and as you're in worse soils, the requirements get higher, and then that's where the civil gets involved.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
You want to talk about copper?
No, I don't. I'm kidding. Just before I go to copper, I will note that we will be updating the stormwater ordinance we're in the process of doing that. It will not materially affect the projects or the development. It's just that the current ordinance is really cumbersome, outdated, does not reference, you know, the right documents, and so we just want to make sure that, you know, it's up to date and it meets the state requirements. So that's really all we're doing. It's not going to. We're using our new guidance, so it's not going to affect really how you do projects. The other thing I did want to note before I go on to copper is. There's also, for stormwater, there's also construction-related requirements. We do require erosion control plans on any projects that have a drainage plan. And that's basically so that the construction site does not impact our stormwater when it rains. So it's having proper BMPs on site to make sure that you keep your sediment on the property. I'll also note the projects that typically have some issues, or have had issues lately, is most projects are now fairly, most developers are pretty on top of it with their erosion control BMPs. The ones where we see some issues is where there's an excavation, whether you're going underground for building or footings. If you have an excavation and it's happening during the winter and it's going to rain, my strong recommendation is to line your excavation with plastic sheeting before it starts raining, because you will not be able to pump dirty water to the street. And an excavation that is a dirt excavation, especially in those hydrologic groups C and D soils, will be silty water that will not be allowed to be pumped to the street. However, if you have plastic lining that excavation and the water that's pooled in there is clean rainwater, you can pump that to the street after the rain. So it's just easier for everyone involved when we do it that way. Any questions on either drainage plans or construction BMPs at this point?
Got one in the audience here, and then we'll check the Zoom.
So in your drainage plans, if you've got some type of water feature or retention pits, sometimes those things can become saturated. Do you allow for an overflow pipe to actually be run out to the curb and gutter?
We do.
Okay, very good.
Yes. Thank you. Actually, we encourage those in those areas of town that have bad drainage. It's almost a necessity to have an overflow.
I want to add into that real quick in that we do allow it. It does require a permanent encroachment, however, so it's another application that has to be made through the city. So it's something that also has to be maintained once it's installed in the right of way. It just can't be installed and essentially abandoned.
Yes.
Gravity flow or pump, let's say if you have to have some pump or something like that.
Correct.
Yeah, and the comment there was gravity flow or pump. So that was, yep. Okay, Sebastian, do we have anything on the Zoom? Anybody that wants to ask a question or make a comment?
I'm not seeing anybody unmute. Yeah, go ahead and just unmute yourself if you would like to speak. That's at the bottom of your screen, or *6 if you're on the phone. Stalling, waiting. I'm not seeing anybody unmute.
All right, thanks, Sebastian. Okay, on to the exciting world of copper then.
I will let you know.
Copper. So I will start by saying that, so I'll give you a little background as to why we're talking about copper. So Carmel is an area of special biological significance that is a regulatory term basically from the state, which means that we have the sanctuary right outside of our door, and our drainage goes to a very important part of the sanctuary that has a lot of wildlife, etc. Because of that, we have extra tight requirements in terms of the quality of runoff that leaves the city and that enters the beach and the bay. We do not treat, well, we have 3 hydrodynamic separators that do take sediment and trash out of the water before it enters the beach and the bay. However, we do not have any other form of treatment for stormwater in the city. So we have to minimize the amount of pollutants at the source because we don't have a way to treat it. There has been a significant amount of analysis and scientific study around the runoff of Carmel-by-the-Sea. It determined that there are 2 contaminants of concern that enter the bay from the city, which are kind of interesting. One is expected, it's fecal coliform or fecal indicator bacteria. Not unusual, happens with runoff from just about every urban area. So that one is not that surprising. The other one is copper. And there are a number of different sources of copper. And for the past 3 years, we've been conducting a study in our regulated outfall, which is at 4th Avenue, in the watershed to try and identify sources of both fecal indicator bacteria and sources of copper. And I'll leave the fecal indicator bacteria to the side because it does not affect you guys. The copper, we did look for, and there are different, so the way that you look for it is you look for, copper that attached to sediment, so, or dissolved copper. Dissolved copper is the more toxic one, and we've identified that this is the one that is really an issue in Carmel. And we've identified that it is very likely related to architectural copper in Carmel. I won't bore you with the detail about how we figured it out, but this has been a 3-year process, and we're coming close to the end of the analysis. We've got another round of sampling. We were hoping for rain sometime after January, but I don't know if that's going to happen, so that we can get one more round of samples. And then after that, we can wrap up our analysis. It is pointing to architectural copper being the most likely culprit, so we will probably end up putting together a policy. We haven't figured out yet what that policy exactly will be, but it will likely impact development that involves copper downspouts and copper roofs. We're probably not going to want to see a lot of these in new developments and in re-roof projects. Again, that's still in the works, but it's really we were trying to. I actually didn't think that architectural copper was going to be the main culprit here. I thought copper brake pads were going to be the main culprit, and it's just looking like this is our issue. So, copper brake pads from cars, and it's pointing to the architectural copper being the bigger problem.
And I think the upshot here is that copper is a wonderful and beautiful natural material that really is fitting with the architecture of Carmel, but we're learning that it might be harmful. And so the story is right now it's not prohibited necessarily in the code as of right now.
It's not as of right now,
but But
Probably going.
given the outcome of the survey, there probably will be something coming in the near future. So we wanted to bring it up today so you can start planning if you're working on development already. We've started to highlight this in planning when we're working with folks, just making you aware and suggesting and guiding people away from copper because we've known about this for a little while. The Planning Commission is clued into it, and so they're starting to recommend people don't use copper, or even in some cases conditioning that no copper be on there. But until we have some sort of urgency ordinance or code passed, it's not a hard no. We can't do 100% no yet at this point, but I have a feeling the writing's on the wall, so you might want to plan accordingly for that. We do have one question here in the audience.
Just from a science standpoint, all of our supply lines are copper for all of our domestic water, which is also, our irrigation and everything else. And I was wondering if there's any way to separate how much of the domestic water supply with the water sitting in the copper and leaching the copper into the water is contributing to this versus the architectural copper.
Well, my guess is, and again, that's a good question. The water supply lines are underground, so they're probably going to leach a little bit, and we're still doing a little bit of work to figure out, how much of the copper impact is coming right during the rain as opposed to from groundwater seepage after the rain. So that's still being figured out, and that could be one place where we would see the difference between something leaching through the ground versus something coming straight from downspouts. The problem is so being the regulator, I'm going to put on my regulator hat. There are some things I can control and some things I can't control. And so we will try to affect the things that we can control to reduce our impact. Water supply lines, unfortunately, is going to be very difficult for me to
Well, and it's a
do
good
anything
question
about.
because the water flows through the supply lines too, and ultimately when it comes out of your sink or we use it in your garden hose or whatever, that is water that's touched copper. But I think, you're thinking about copper that's up on a roof or a gutter, it's oxidizing a lot heavier than your supply lines are. So that could be part of the logic too, that the architectural copper.
It definitely oxidizes quite a bit with the salt air that we have
Exactly,
here.
yeah. It's exposed to rainwater, which has all kinds of other things in it versus just your tap water, hopefully. So yeah,
And your tap water does get tested.
yeah.
So there's, and the thing is the copper, so one thing that I want to note is the copper issue and the ASBS issue has to do with wildlife and fish and organisms that are out in the ocean, and it's less for human health concern than it is for a wildlife. It's extremely toxic. I mean, copper is used as an antibacterial for a reason. It has antibacterial properties for a reason. It's because it's extremely toxic. So that is the issue that we face with it out in the bay.
And on that pleasant note, thank you, Agnes.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Leave you all smiling on the way out today. So next we're going to hear from Sullivan, who's going to talk a little bit about our electronic submittal process. This is just sort of following along the lines of trying to make things better, faster, stronger. Thank you for that. Better, faster, stronger, and just more efficient, trying to use technology as much as we can. I mean, COVID had a lot of terrible things associated with it, but one of the benefits of it, I think, is places like Carmel-by-the-Sea and other small jurisdictions were forced to come into the 21st century with technology. And so this is another thing that came out of that, electronic permits. So Sullivan, take it away.
Yeah, Carmel we were forced to come kicking and screaming into the modern age all of a sudden, from hand-drawn plans to electronic submissions only. Now that we have returned to the office and things are getting back to some normality, we are going to continue with our electronic permit submissions and encourage that as much as possible. Currently, for the building department, we are no longer accepting physical plan sets. You can come to the front desk, you can drop off a physical application form, but you can't submit a plan set unless it's in something like a USB or CD. And what we do is we really encourage individuals to take advantage of our online permitting system, which I'll get to in just a little bit, to save you that trip down here. You may want to come in face-to-face, and you're always welcome to do that, but we're trying to make it as kind of convenient and streamlined as possible. For those of you who have been to our website, this may be a little bit familiar, but I will guide us back through there. On the update that we did, we are now accepting building permits, planning permits, tree permits, encroachment permits, everything electronically through our website to make this as easy as possible. If you go to our main community planning and building page, right down here, you have an option to submit for an electronic permit, which will take you to a new landing page where you could submit for everything here. Not just submit either, you can also review your submitted documents that are in process. You can see where they're at. You can view them in a number of different ways. But we, for this process, have created a guidance document to help those of you through it. Because new systems are not always easy, nor are they always intuitive. But one of the documents that we've put together is a step-by-step application submission guidance form. This comes with convenient links, pictures, informations, phone numbers to call if you have any questions. But we're really trying to push individuals to go through our electronic permit submittal process. It saves you time, it saves you money, not having to lug around big plan sets anymore, not having to run 4 or 5 copies off for plan check and RFI submissions.
And I think we'll say this a bunch, we're here to help with this. So because this is something we want you all to do, we are willing to help you with this. So Sullivan, myself, whoever you can get a hold of, we will help you through this process the first time if you haven't used it before. So please reach out to us if it seems daunting.
Absolutely. I'm always available. You can give me a call or an email, and I'll be able to either help guide you through this or answer any questions that you have related to it. But I would encourage individuals to, before you submit, go through this document. It's available on our website. It'll also be available as part of the link that's going to be sent out after the meeting. So you can take a look through it and try and submit your electronic permit through that. If it doesn't work, like I said, you can always come in and drop off a USB or CD to us directly, or alternatively, send me an email with the information and I'll be able to help you with processing that or get you to the right person who can help you with whatever type of permit you're looking to submit. In addition to our electronic permit submission guidance document that we've put together, we are bringing back a process that we had pre-COVID, which was our permits by appointment. The intent of these permit by appointment applications is to contact our staff here and to sit down together, whether it be in person or over Zoom, and work out a permit submission and an approval in approximately 1 hour time frame meeting. This is for projects that are limited in scope. You're not getting your planning commission new 1,800 square foot house approved at one of these meetings. But we have a list here of applications that may be approvable under this process. So alterations and repairs of structural damage, some commercial TIs or repairs, non-bearing partitions, minor plan revisions to projects that are already issued or submitted, stormwater drainage systems, or a number of other things. So we're really going to try and, in addition to our electronic submission, use this to cut down on everybody's time, save you a little bit of time, save our staff a little bit of time. There is an additional fee for this that's determined by our fee schedule, but really it's with the intent of getting you out there and getting you to work or to resume work with a revision.
And Sullivan, once again, where can people find all these things?
Available on our website, and I will show you where you can find them. There you go. So conveniently, everything that we've talked about is available here. If you want to go to either our planning or building department, you'll find the same information. But if you just go ahead and click on our building safety division, and then down here, applications and informational handouts, everything will be available here. So you can find all of our digital application forms, all of our process guidance documents, supplemental application forms, and job aids. So all that information will be kept here. Our SOGs, or guidance documents, cover one topic at a time and gives you kind of an in-depth, detailed description of what the building department is looking for these items, whether it's generators, stormwater systems, decks, stairs, railings, OSHA violations. There's a number of items here that you can find information on, and we really encourage individuals to take a look at these. Any question you have may already be answered and on here, but again, contact our staff if you need additional clarification.
Yeah, and if I might, Sullivan, just in the interest of time, because I don't want people to have to go far past 11 o'clock. So if you notice on the agenda, and the reason we set this up this way is because we're trying to clue people into the fact that on the planning side of things, there's different tracks. There's track 1, track 2, minor, major, depending on what type of project it is. It functions the same way in building too. So we've got over-the-counter permits, we've got permit by appointment, and we've got the full permit review. So you've got different tracks in building too. They function similarly. And so really that's the first step along your journey of developing, is determining what track your project is and then letting us help you through the process. Sullivan's gonna flash these up really quickly, but the three SOPs for how to go through the different processes are on our website. If you just wanna go through them really quickly, Sullivan, show them what they look like.
Yeah, so our permit by appointment, we already went through this. There's a list of eligible and non-eligible projects. Our over-the-counter permits, we still do these. They're handled a little bit differently, but they can be submitted electronically or in person. And the intent is to have a approval to you within 24 hours, so within a business day. Again, you can go through here, approvable works and non-approvable works, and guidance on how to submit.
And once again, it's important to note that Sullivan did the same wonderful job that Evan did and the rest of the team, that there's a lot of hyperlinks in these guidances that will take you to other parts of our website and the documents that are referenced. So they're meant to be a really, really helpful tool for you during the development process.
We do have one for, you'll have to pardon me, we do have one for our full permit submissions. I don't have it available at this time, but it is a kind of full guidance document that says, if you're going to be submitting for a full building permit, here's the steps in which it goes through. In addition to that, we're producing a new routing sheet for when someone submits an application. We've had individuals say, I'm not quite sure what my fees are going to be. I'm not quite sure who's going to be reviewing my project. Either they're not sure who their planner is, or will this require forestry or stormwater review? So we're trying to make that clear at the very beginning. And so when this project's submitted, you'll be receiving one of those sheets that details all that information.
Do you have that you can put up? I'll babble a little bit while you pull it up. So this is a great example of, like I said earlier, give us some feedback, and if it's something that we think will help the process, we'll make the change. So we had someone who was processing a project, and you've probably all seen it. When you get your invoice, there's a bunch of boxes with 3- and 4-letter acronyms with dollar amounts next to them. Nobody knows what those are. I mean, we could be making up things, but we're not. I mean, but you just have no idea what those were. So someone said, can you just use regular English words and put those next to the dollar signs? I mean, duh, right? Like, why didn't we think of that? But this is the kind of stuff, let us know if there's something in your day-to-day process that you think we can make better. So that's what Sullivan's talking about. We've created this now one piece of documentation that not only shows you your invoice with real English words next to them, but also has contact information for everyone and a checklist next to who's going to be reviewing your project, so you know that this is going to go to planning, building, and environmental compliance. And it's going to have that person's name and their contact information next to it. Now, we still want you to work through us, through Sullivan and the shop here, because we're the single point of contact. We help route it. We're sort of like the quarterback or the project manager in all of this. But it still gives you a contact, and you know who the person is that's going to be helping you. That way, if you need to get a hold of them, you can. I don't know if you have that up there, we can show it.
I don't have it available here, but it'll be available in the drive that gets sent out to everyone who's interested. Additionally, it'll list if your project needs to go for fire or water department review for our associated districts.
Were there any other, I know you went through the permit submittal tracks, and we just did that extra SOP and job aid. Was there anything else new and exciting from the job aid perspective? It's all very new and exciting, of course. But
all very new and exciting.
Yeah.
All of our SOGs are currently updated to the 2019 California Building Code, which we use, and they will be updated once the new code edition is pushed out.
Great. Well, it's all on the website, so once again, please go take a look, but we're here to help. So reach out and we'll get you whatever guidance we think you might need. Thanks, Sullivan.
Any questions?
Any questions from the audience? SOGs, anybody out there in Zoom land, Sebastian?
I'm not seeing anybody. I'll remind you again, you can unmute yourself or *6 if you're on a phone. I'm not seeing anybody unmute.
Okay, well, we'll invite up Jermel Laurie, our building official. Many of you probably remember Jermel was our building inspector for several years, and just recently in the last year was promoted to building official. It's a real internal success story, so we're excited to have Jermel as our building official and to hear what he has to say.
Thank you, Brandon. Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to hit some bullet points and give you some reminders and clarification on some building issues, and I hope to wrap it up very neatly with a bow with one of my last announcements. So the first thing I wanted to address was special inspections, tests, and observations. And I just wanted to clarify where special inspections are required. That is required from a third party, not the engineer of record. There are times when there is confusion on that point, whether it be a special inspection for epoxy, shear nailing 4 inches or less, or if there's concrete reinforcement that does require a special inspection, it will be from a third party. And we do have a list of special approved agencies on our supplemental applications documents section, right under the SOGs.
The website's so easy, you can get there lickety-split, I think.
There you go. And that's our list of approved agencies. And if you do have an agency that would like to apply and get on that list, feel free to contact Sullivan, and we can get that done for you. As far as the Title 15 update schedule and the building standards update, should the state stay current on their timeline, in July, the 2023 codes, or 2022 codes rather, should be published in July, and if that happens, then the 2022 building codes will go into effect on January 1, 2023. And once again, once that's published, the city will be moving ahead and adopting that into our municipal code as well. So just wanted to give you that heads up. There was a bill, AB 1561. There was a section of it that allowed for or disallowed the permit expiration of any building permits because of COVID. That since expired on December 31st last year, and currently there is no, that has not been renewed. Instead of having a hard date as of January 1st, we have decided to allow up to June 30th for a permit extension request to be submitted to the city, and they will be granted for an additional 180 days. So if you have any projects that are currently expired and you would like them not to be formally expired by the city, you have until June 30th to do that.
But Jermel, it's important, they have to have expired during that period, right?
Yes.
This isn't a permit
Correct.
that expired 10
Yes.
years ago.
Yes. I believe if memory serves me, March 3rd, 2019, I believe was the very last day before the emergency measures went into effect for COVID. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that was the period of time. So if you do have a permit that expired during that time, then just get your request in and it will be granted. This is also subject to change whether or not the state decides to extend that or renew that assembly bill, and we will keep you up to date on that. Sullivan, how quick can you pull up SOG 1804? There you go. Awesome. So The only reason I really bring this up partially was because of Council Member Barron's announcement of possible changes for the fire requirements. I just wanted everybody to be aware that we do have a guidance document. If you scroll down a little bit, Sullivan, it does have, scroll to the map, if you would. We do have our wildland urban interface map on this SOG document. I also bet it is on our GIS mapping tool.
That's a safe bet.
Yep. So this also has all the requirements of the high fire severity zone, construction, mainly new construction, significant remodels and stuff like that. So I just want you to be aware of where to find that information. Updates may be coming in the future. I wanted to take this time right now to introduce Dwayne Dauphiné, our new building inspector. And I'm going to let Dwayne come up and introduce himself and give you a minute of his time.
Thank you, Jermel. Yeah, I'm Dwayne Dauphiné, new hire here at the city for the building inspection services. I want to give you a little background about myself, not give you my life story. I come from the construction trades. I did 25 hard years in the field before becoming a building inspector for the county of San Benito, where I've spent past 5 years as a building inspector, building official. And as a result of being in the trades, I empathize with the building community and have been on your side of the table in inspection process and submittal documents and so forth. So I hope to be a good resource of information for you folks, and committed to making policy changes and procedure changes, improvements, and just am really looking forward to the opportunity to work in such a nice area where clearly you contractors and have your act together. So I'm really looking forward to working with you out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. Dwayne will be out with me for the next few weeks, meeting all the contractors on site and kind of introducing them to the community. So welcome, Dwayne. I'm very happy that he's here. It's going to make my availability here in the office to the public increase quite a bit, and also by phone, just all the way around. We are going to be running a more efficient building department. So
Jamel doesn't show a lot of emotion, but when we hired Dwayne, he did start dancing and singing.
I did.
Sorry, I told him about that.
So yeah, we're going to be moving a vast majority of our plan checks back in-house in the near future. And so I just wanted to happily announce that. Just a couple quick reminders about construction in general. Construction hours, 8 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., Monday through Saturday. No construction on Sundays.
No construction on Sundays?
None.
No construction on Sundays?
None.
No construction on Sundays?
No construction
Okay.
on Sundays. Holidays, if it is not a Sunday, construction is allowed. Typical construction hours. Let me see where I was. Just a reminder, if you have construction fencing or materials that are going to be in the right-of-way for more than 48 hours, I believe is what the municipal code says, any equipment whatsoever in the street at any time during construction, please acquire your temporary encroachment permits. This is a very important issue that is the public is always concerned about. So I just want to make sure you guys stay up to date on your temporary encroachment permits. And I was going to let you all know that every time I said more information coming, I did want to announce that within the next month or so, I will be starting a monthly construction blog update. It'll be through Constant Contact, so I believe it'll be, if you're on the city's mailing list, you will receive the announcement and you can subscribe for these monthly blog updates. So it'll be everything from the building code updates coming up into the new year, just to possibly particular construction methods, some materials, any updates whatsoever. The main changes that I have observed in the building code are going to be energy related. The Building Standards Commission seems to have focused specifically on that for this building code cycle. So I will keep everybody updated on that.
So this is really exciting. I want to give Jermel a lot of kudos for this. He came up with this idea, and I think it's such a wonderful idea to have, similar to like the Friday letter that Chip does every week. So this will be not as frequent, I don't think. You're thinking maybe monthly or every few weeks or something. Yep. But it'll be a similar format through Constant Contact. It'll go out and it'll have printed information. And Sullivan, if you wouldn't mind putting up on our homepage. So for those that don't know, we have the ability for folks to sign up for things that they're interested in through Constant Contact. We set this up a little less than a year ago. Just go to our homepage, click on Sign Me Up right there. It's nice and easy. And then you get routed to this sheet. And if you just wheel down, Sullivan, we have all these topics that are on there. These are all things that people are interested in. We have, cell phone towers, development guidelines updates. We even have specific projects, the 7th and Dolores project. So you can go on here, put in your email address, click as many or as few as you want, and we will send you updates on these topics. So this is what Jermel was saying. If you want to sign up for the building department blog, it will be on here for you to be able to sign up for, along with anything else that you're interested in. You can see ADUs on there, pension, we've got budget on there. So we really have been trying to encourage people to go to this. This is a way that we want to try to continually grow our communication with the community through a tool like this. So go check it out if you can and sign up for some interesting topics.
In my very last update, we'll be speaking for Carmen Prue, the Deputy Fire Marshal. One new criteria we're going to have for commercial TI projects will be the submittal to the Fire Marshal of all updated inspections of quarterlies, annuals, and 5 years for fire risers, just to ensure the fire life safety of the community and the downtown area especially. And that it just gives us one more tool to make sure from the fire aspect and fire prevention and protection aspect that we are keeping the community safe. So I just wanted to make you aware, if you do end up looking into a TI project for anything commercial, just to be sure that you either get in contact with your fire suppression contractor, or make sure, whether it be kitchen hoods in a restaurant, something like that, that everything is up to date as far as your required reports that need to be submitted to the fire department. And that's, go ahead, Matt.
Hold on a second. Oh yeah, the question was electrical panels. I think that was on the agenda. Was there anything you wanted to say about electrical panels?
I didn't have that.
We had been talking, maybe speak just a little bit about when...
To the undergrounding?
Yeah, the undergrounding and the requirement to do that even, if PG&E is going to be delayed.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, because I think we're all aware that PG&E seems to be overloaded, and there are fairly significant delays to getting the panels undergrounded on projects. Do you have that form that we do? So in order to facilitate finaling out permits and not delaying the finalization of permits, what we have come up with as a solution to the problem is we've basically created a covenant that the homeowner, myself, and the city notary, we set up a meeting, everybody signs the covenant, the homeowner will then go to the county assessor's office, record it with the county assessor to tie it to the property. Once that is done, we can essentially do what is temporary power from a riser overhead until such time that PG&E is finally ready to underground the electrical on your project. At that point in time, an electrician would just come pull an additional permit for the disconnect reconnect so that I can get a release put on the underground portion of that, and then the underground portion will be taken care of, and then the project will be officially completed.
And we don't have the form to show you, but it's really boring. It's just a form that says I promise to do this, basically. But this is a great example of the city, the building official and the rest of the staff trying to find ways to keep projects moving and find creative solutions to a problem that we didn't create and have no control over, being PG&E's delays. And so this can keep your project moving as long as we can get something recorded that says eventually it will go underground. Any other questions? We got a couple here.
So all new construction and major remodels are going to be required to have underground power?
If you meet the requirements of the municipal code, which is a $200,000 threshold for the evaluation of your project, and if the electrical panel is changed out, the power is required to go underground.
Okay, very good.
Thanks. Any other questions?
Just wanted clarification. Just get clarification for the community. And you're saying you need a temporary riser would be acceptable? Is that like on a porta potty or attached to the building, or how does that work?
I think we are going to handle that project specific as far as if there needs to be a temporary pole someplace. We will work with the applicants on the location of that for that temporary period of time. We've
Yeah, because we still want to try to protect the visual impacts of that temporary installation, because temporary in this world that we're dealing with PG&E could be 6 months to a year, so it's not that temporary. Yeah, that's a good question though. Anybody else? Anybody on the Zoom? Oh, we got one in the room, but I'll go to the Zoom really quick and then we'll hit the room here. Sebastian, you see anybody on Zoom that would like to ask a question?
I don't see anybody unmuting. Give them the chance again. Go ahead and unmute at the bottom of your screen, or *6 if you're on your phone.
Okay, doesn't say.
I'm not seeing any activity on Zoom.
Great, okay, we'll come back to the room then.
There was recently a car accident that struck a PG&E pole between my house and my neighbor's, and I was wondering if there are delays on fixing, the ground was disturbed and all that, if there's anything in this, your creative approach to mitigating PG&E delays. Is there anything that can be done with regard to that?
Unfortunately, I don't want to speak to any PG&E issues.
Yeah, hang out if you would after the meeting, and I'll get your information and we'll see, because it sounds like a pretty case-specific thing. So let me get your information afterwards and we'll see what we can look into for you. Okay? Anybody else in the room have a question? Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Jamel.
Thank you all for attending again.
So I'm gonna tee off on the fire, because as Jamel said, Carmen isn't here today. And for those of you that haven't had a chance to meet Carmen yet, she's wonderful. She's stepping into the role that Seychelle used to play for us. So hopefully you get a chance to meet her if you haven't yet, but she's really wonderful to work with. Very solution-oriented, creative, customer service-minded type of person. So we're excited to get to work with her. One thing I want to talk about, getting to the creative, solution-oriented, go back to one of the bad examples, if you would, for me, please. So these fire risers, they are important, but they're ugly. And I mean, sorry if you really love these, if this is like your aesthetic, but I just think they're ugly. So the problem that we have is that they're required and they're necessary, but in the past, we haven't been able to convince the fire department to allow for any sort of like shielding or covering or anything of these fire risers. So again, trying to be creative, try to solve a problem. We worked with the fire department and came up with some guidelines about how we can cover these up in the future. So if you go to the good example for me. Thank you. So this is the good example of what we're hoping fire risers will look like into the future. So you can see the only thing you can see from the street is just the hose connection. And then go to the next one. All that equipment's inside. And really what it came down to is, sure, you can put a door on it. You just have to be able to access it, and the door can't have a lock on it. I mean, it's really no more dangerous to have a door that opens to this equipment than having it just out there on its own already where people can touch it. So this at least gets it out of the public eye. So as you're submitting, as we're moving forward on projects, if there's a new fire riser that's in the public view shed, we're going to be asking for some kind of shielding or cover. There's another project right now. Remind me of the building, Evan. Is it it's the one behind Flaherty's, is the one you just did with the Historic Resource Board.
I don't know the name. It's right next to.
It's okay. It's okay. It's over just off of 6th. There's a building where they're redoing the bay window, and there's a fire riser and equipment underneath. So we got the fire department to sign off on essentially building a box around it in the landscaping, so it doesn't look like a bunch of gross pipes. So keep that in mind as you're designing your projects. We're going to be asking more about where are your fire risers going, where are your downspouts going, where are these appurtenances that have to be there, where are they going to be, and how are they going to affect what it looks like. Residential also. Yeah. This is all really important stuff. It all adds to what a place feels and looks like. Where did my agenda go? I moved it on myself. So I think that gets us through the fire department. Our friend Daryl from COD was hoping to be able to join us today. I don't know if he's going to be able to be here. Maybe he's on Zoom. Sebastian, do you see Daryl from Carmel Area Wastewater District on Zoom by any chance?
Yes, just unmuted. So.
Oh, super. Okay. Hi, Daryl.
Yep, go ahead.
How you doing? Can everybody hear me, hopefully?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, so thanks. First of all, thanks for inviting us. I just wanted to touch base real quick on, I get fielded a lot of questions of what is Carmel Area Wastewater District, and so I'll do just a smidge back history. We were formed in 1908 as the Carmel Sanitary District. And we were the conveyance of wastewater basically outside of the city properties to community cesspools. In the early 1920s, we reached an agreement with the Carmel-by-the-Sea to own and maintain the collection system in Carmel. Around in the late 1920s, a treatment plant was built south of the river, and we have been there ever since. As we expanded, we have changed our name in the 1990s to Carmel Area Wastewater District. So that's a real quick little short brush on everything. So we own the collection system in Carmel-by-the-Sea and the surrounding areas. Our district goes outside of, our boundaries go outside of Carmel-by-the-Sea. We're going all the way out to Quail Meadows and down to Highlands. So we encompass a much larger area. We are a special district. I think a couple of the bullet points that we wanted to touch on, we had in 2019 a revision of our plumbing ordinance. And in that revision, we have added that we're requiring an inspection of the sewer lateral. And there's basically 3 indicators that would trigger an inspection. That would be the transfer of property from one owner to the next, and that seems to be the bulk of them as of lately. A remodel of over $50,000, or if the lateral has spilled onto the public property. So, and in that ordinance, what we were asking for is an inspection be made of the lateral to check the condition. You would submit that to the district. Our website is carmelareawastewaterdistrict.org. And you'd submit a form, which is on our website, as well as a video. So just a couple, some questions that I get asked is, where is Carmel Area Wastewater District's responsibility when it comes to building permits or plumbing permits? So we take over responsibility once the lateral has left the house. So anything that is within the house or underneath the house is Carmel-by-the-Sea or the County of Monterey. And once it leaves the building, then it becomes Carmel Area Wastewater District's jurisdiction to inspect and improve.
And Daryl, sorry to interrupt,
Yes.
but you're saying house, but that's also in the commercial district, correct?
Correct. I guess the resident or property, I guess is better way. So permits can be pulled at our main office, which is on 3945 Rio Road. We can also apply and get a permit online, again, at carmelareawastwaterdistrict.org. I think that's, if there's any questions regarding the sewer laterals, since our ordinance was passed in 2019, we've had approximately 800 properties that have met compliance. So our program is working, and we are reducing our sewer lateral spills. So.
Thanks, Daryl. That's great. And I think one important note there is that the permit process associated with COD is very different than pretty much everything else with the city. So the city tries to be a one-stop shop. We even take in applications for fire and sprinklers and things like that. But COD, given that you're your own entity, the applications for anything COD related go to you directly. Those aren't applications we take in here at the city. So that's where we have a difference there. And I have one question in the audience, Daryl. I got a hand up here.
Sure.
Daryl, this is Ken. Would you explain to the audience here the old Carmel trap in some of the very old homes, and explain a little bit about that beautiful work of industrial progress?
Yeah, so Ken is talking about the Carmel trap, or otherwise known as a P trap. Everybody has them underneath their sinks nowadays. Back in the olden days, they were installed to basically keep the odor out from inside the house. So it is a water gap, essentially a trap that keeps the sewer gases from entering in the house. Nowadays, codes have P traps underneath the sinks and everything in the homes. They are cast iron, and they have really become a source of blockages for private laterals. The cast iron gets very porous and everything sticks to them, and then you have lateral spills. So they are something that is being removed quite commonly nowadays. So.
Thank you for that. Yeah. And Daryl, do you want to talk a little bit? We do have on the agenda just a note about ADUs. You want to talk a little bit about how COD's regulatory oversight handles ADUs? I mean, everybody knows here in the city, you know, we're pretty restricted when it comes to counting ADUs towards, you know, floor area and coverage and things like that. They've become a very ministerial project. How do ADUs and the extra loads that they might deliver to the system, how do those impact your regulatory oversight?
So, yes, that's a great question. So ADUs are considered an accessory dwelling unit. They are considered a separate connection. So when an ADU is built, the homeowner or property owner will need to apply for a new connection to the district. I'm not sure on the fees on that. If you have any questions, you can reach our main office on that. We can get the fees later on. But essentially, it is considered a separate dwelling, and it will have a separate billing as well, too. Well, same billing, but you'll be charged for two dwellings on the one property. But there will be a new connection fee that is being charged.
And Daryl, so one of the issues, there's only a couple things in the state regulations about ADUs that really are stopping points. One of them is sewer, and the other is water, and in some cases traffic as well. But as far as capacity goes, you have plenty of capacity. It's not like the county issue where they have to deal with septic systems on a property where it's overloaded and they have to expand it, or they don't have room to build more of a septic field. You have plenty of capacity. It's just a matter of paying for that extra connection. Is that correct?
That is correct. Our treatment plan was designed at approximately 4 million gallons a day. With the low flow toilets and the water reuse that we're having nowadays, we're down to about 1.2 million a day. So we definitely have capacity as well. So it's not that we're preventing it. We have the capacity to be able to treat it.
Super. Thanks, Daryl. I got a question here in the audience for you. Hold on just one second.
Okay.
Hey, Daryl, it's John with PSTS.
John, how you doing?
Good, good. Hey, how about with regards to a junior ADU that they're required to have their own man door for ingress and egress, but you can have a shared bathroom with the main house. If there's not a bathroom in the junior ADU, are you required or not required to have a separate connection?
So the connection can be made from the same lateral. So we want to make sure that we're not asking for the ADU to run a separate lateral. It's not what we're asking for. I think
yeah,
that
separate. I think Daryl. I think the question is it considered a separate connection? So a JEDU, the concept is it's really just converting a bedroom more or less into a space that has an exterior entrance, and it may or may not share a toilet with the main facility. So in those cases, a JEDU, when you're not putting in a toilet, no new plumbing or anything like that, are you charging a second connection fee for that?
No, I believe where the second connection fee comes in is where there's a kitchen.
Excellent. Thank you. That makes sense. Any other questions here in the audience, in the room? Sebastian, oh, I got one in the back here? No, just a stretch. Okay. Sebastian, anything on the Zoom?
I'm not seeing anybody else. If you have a question, go ahead and unmute yourself, speak up. Not seeing any activity there.
Great, thank you. Okay, well that's the end of our agenda. I want to thank everybody, but I'd like to open it. We've got about 10 or 15 minutes for general questions, comments, thoughts. How often you want to do this? Is there something we can do next time that'd be better? Anybody have, this is open forum, so anybody have something? Got something in the back here, thank you.
What is the material that is being used to replace the old Carmel P-trap?
That's a great question.
Great question. So
let's see if he gives the same answer.
The material for the Carmel trap is cast iron, and nowadays plumbers are installing either ABS or PVC pipe.
Nailed it. We had the answer in the audience too, and not on the microphone. So you just checked out there, Daryl. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else have a question or comment, just generally, something that you think we could do better, or something that's working really well that we should keep doing? Got another one in the audience here.
I hate to be the chatty Cathy. But at the very beginning of this session, you were speaking about adding 5 new citizens to this design guideline board. Are there going to be some requirements that those 5 citizens at large have a reasonable amount of construction, architectural experience, so they can actually be helpful versus not knowing how to read plans and so forth?
That's an excellent question. So this is, what we asked the city council to do, so each city council member is being asked to appoint one person. And the city council is our boss, so we can't necessarily tell them what to do. But we did give them, and they asked for, because they really do want to find the right people for this, they asked for some qualifications, like what's the perfect candidate. So we gave them feedback on things just like you were saying, having at least a strong interest in some sort of background in design or architecture or construction, being open-minded, honestly. I mean, this is a steering committee that's taking and redoing something that's existed for 20 years. So we want people that are willing to have a conversation, people that have time. This is not a thing that isn't going to require time. We're going to meet once a month with this group. They're also going to be asked to come to all of the public meetings as well, because they're the 5 people that are been selected by the city council. So it's a time commitment as well. So absolutely, we've asked for people that have some sort of technical ability. You don't have to be licensed. You don't have to have a stamp that you can put on things. But we did ask council to find people that would be a good fit for the team. And that's part of the reason for doing the meeting on the 5th. So it's going to be an appointment meeting on the 5th, discussion, and I mean, they have to agree on the 5. So, and we certainly welcome the public to come and be part of that as well. But don't worry, because we're going to have multiple public meetings, just general. So all of you that have licenses and everything, you can come, and we want you to come be part of that process. We'll be sharing everything as we get it done, all the drafts. It's going to be a very, very interactive process, I assure you. Another question here in the room.
Yeah, on the online permitting and especially like the planning and the building, are there plans to have a process where you can check the status of your project or the timeline of your project? You know, currently I submit a planning application and then I'll get, oh, that tag has been closed, but then it's like, well, has it been assigned to a planner? How long is it going to be before I get feedback? You know, stuff that my clients are always bugging the crap out of me to know.
Yes, so as part of the online submission system and the routing sheet that we talked about, giving you the information, at least for the building permit side, you'll be notified of here's our expected timeline, here's who's going to be reviewing your project. If you want to check in, you can always check in with us. One of the processes for what you can do through our online submittals is go back in and check your permit process. And one of the things that we have discussed but not implemented is expanding that. So in review, very vague term, could mean anything. So we have discussed that, but we haven't gone about implementing anything as of yet.
Yeah, we're working on developing that because I've worked at jurisdictions where they have that exact system. Other permit management systems like Acela are much more customer focused on the other side of the counter. And so we're working with our company, iWork, that we use to develop some more tools for customer interface and more modules that we can open. For example, did you know that iWork actually has a map also on the customer facing side where you can go and click on your parcel in iWork after you've submitted your application and find all the materials that were submitted and everything like that. So we're slowly working on turning those on. We didn't have those ready for today. We just started talking to the company here a week or two ago. So we'll work on that and we'll blast that out as it comes out. But I'm with you 100%. I think the more selfishly, the more that you can help yourself and figure out where your project's at, the more time we can spend, I shouldn't say it that way, the more time we can spend on moving other things forward. So yeah, that's a great question. Anybody else?
Thank you. I just have one clarifying question for the PG&E process. With the covenant, and I know a lot is out of our control, but are projects able to be finalized, or do they have to wait for the PG&E to be grounded? And does that entail the certificate of occupancy temporary?
Yeah. So once the covenant is signed and the project gets to the final stage, it has power and it has all the requirements, yes, we can final that permit. That was the goal and the intent of creating that process.
Great question. And then going backwards, which I don't often like to do, but it was pointed out to me, and I think I forgot to mention it. So you can currently check the status of your permit on iWork. I think there may be extra statuses that we can put on there, so more specifically what the status is at. But if you go in to the existing permits under iWork, which Sullivan's doing on the screen for you right now, and you just type in your permit number, see if you can remember one off the top of his head.
Let's do it.
So you can see it pulls one up. You can view it, and then it gives you the status right there. It says it's been issued. So that's at the top of the screen there. We are working to see if we can get, more statuses that we can put up there, so it's more clear where it's at in the process. But this is on there right now. It's something that's been up there for a while, and this is something we're trying to do because I don't think a lot of people have been informed about all these, technological advances that we have. So we're trying to get it out there. We're trying to advertise it so you can go on and check the status of your permit. Any other questions in the room? Comments, thoughts? Sebastian, anybody on the Zoom have a general Q&A or open forum suggestion?
I'm not seeing anybody unmute.
Okay. Well, I think we might have made it just under time then. It's 5 to 11. Thank you all very much for coming. Sincerely, if you haven't filled out, we have a sign-in sheet with your name and email address. That's the way we can send you everything we talked about today. If you walk away from here and you think, oh man, there's something I wanted to tell them that can make things better, email us. All of our contact information is on our website, phone numbers, everything's there. So please get in touch with us. We'd love hearing from you. And thanks for coming today. Take care.